I want you to consider something. There are people in the world who will never understand manifestation. There's people in the world who will never understand how to actually emotionally heal themselves from the inside out. One of the reasons that I'm so passionate about what I do, why I get excited to wake up in the morning, and I'm filled with so much purpose and passion for what I share and what I do, is knowing that our journey is to create a better world. Our purpose of being, spiritual awakening, light workers, change makers, way showers, spiritual entrepreneurs, light leaders, soul-led leaders, all of these fancy terms, indigos, crystals, all the things of different names, is we are here for a reason. And the more that we step into our purpose, we are changing the world from the inside out. And one of the things that brings me so much passion, so much joy, is knowing that I wake up in the morning knowing that my children know how to manifest. My children know emotional intelligence and how to regulate their nervous system. My children are leading the next generation, and everyone who's on this path is leading the next generation and the next generation after that into a better world full of emotional intelligence, manifesting, co-creation, building our life from amazing desires of our hearts, unlocking our true potential of who we are, raising the consciousness of the planet. But beyond all the fluffy terms, we are literally creating the evolution of consciousness. We are learning how to change ourselves from the inside out, not the outside in. And from this place in our hearts, in our minds, we're learning not only how to heal ourselves, but how we can actually co-create our lives. And that's something I am truly obsessed with. It's something that I am incredibly passionate on. It's something that just never goes away for me, because I know in my heart that this is the real revolution. This is the mind-body revolution. Energy is who you are. Energy is how we change our life. We have to realize that understanding energy is how we can fundamentally change ourselves from the inside out, and understand that one shift, one perspective, one decision away, literally one decision away from a different life, from a different truth, from a different way of living. This is for the soul-led leaders, the awakened ones, the revolutionaries, the visionaries, the change makers, the light workers, the empaths, the true awakened ones. This is our story. Are you ready? Welcome to Awaken and Manifest Your Best Life with Ashley from theawakenedstate.net. It's time to wake up to who you truly are. Welcome to the podcast. It's time for the activation. And remember, the universe is inside of you, and you hold the power to design your life. Enjoy the show. Hey guys, so welcome to another episode of Awaken and Manifest Your Best Life. So today I want to take a little bit of a behind the scenes look of, how this all started and how I'm so incredibly passionate about this work, and why you should be too, because this is the work that can change our lives. This is the work that you could create rapid shifts, rapid perspective shifts, rapid energy shifts in your life. And that's going to automatically, by universal law, translate out into your world. And so I'd like to take you back to a time where I didn't really even know any of this existed yet. But I still had that inkling, that nudge, that desire to keep moving forward in this direction. And around when I had a spiritual awakening, it was around 11/11/11. I know that was pretty crazy, but true, very true. I could even show you the emails. It was around 11/11/11. I had a massive spiritual awakening. And I saw energy for the first time in my life. I physically saw blue orbs of light. And it was this moment of questioning myself, questioning my reality, questioning who I am. And it kind of created this domino effect, this ripple effect of really opening up my eyes to so much more perspective, so much more information. And like I said in the previous episode, it was like I felt hypersensitive and bombarded by information. I felt claustrophobic at times. I felt emotionally overwhelmed and insecure and really just almost out of body. I even had some out of body experiences because I just felt so overwhelmed with this new information that was flooding my consciousness. And it all started because I started questioning. I started questioning my reality. I started questioning my ego. I started questioning who I was. I started questioning my sense of identity of who I was. I started questioning my purpose. I started questioning why the fuck was I in college? I started questioning what actually meant like so much to me. Like, what was I even doing with my life? It just led me down this series of questions. I started questioning God and suffering and why reality is created. Like, the funny thing is, I just remember, like, even growing up, I always used to have these really bizarre thoughts. Like, I remember I would be the weirdo in my group of friends that would be, like, interrupting the conversation and being like, but do you ever wonder, like, why we're actually here? Do you ever wonder, like, why we're on this planet right now? And my friends would be like, Ashley, stop talking so weird. But I would always have these thoughts. And it was like all of these moments just literally build up and snowball into who you are because that's who you always were. It's just we've either been suppressing that part of ourselves or we've been like dimming that part of ourselves down. Or maybe we weren't even just ready for it and we know when we're ready for it. So I feel like spiritual awakening is like, it's like a catalyst point in our evolution of consciousness of who we are. It's this moment of reclaiming your authentic self, who is beyond the basic programming that you've been installed with as a child. And this understanding of like, you've always knew that though. Like you always knew, like maybe you were unaware of it, but you always knew, like deep down inside of you, there was something different about you. There was something different about why you felt weirder than the other ones. There was something different about why you could always have that intuitive sense of who you are. There was always something about the way that you showed up differently. And I know that there's a part of you that felt that way too. Otherwise, you wouldn't have found me and read my work or found this podcast because you get it. Like there's this unique part of ourselves that we are tapping into and discovering. And it really is about removing that sense of suppression. So when I think about like where this all started, it started with really questioning everything. It started with perspective. It started with really feeling lost, hopeless, confused, directionless, and in this space where I was so overwhelmed and confused, and it became this miraculous journey of supreme clarity, enlightenment, like a revolution of consciousness in my mind. And I think that is really the journey of spiritual awakening. It's not about experiencing supreme bliss or this moment of supreme oneness. It's about a catalyst of moments after moments after moments after moments of the journey of experiencing this sense of peacefulness and purpose and passion and zest for life, and seeing that we're so much more than a 9 to 5 and we live until we die. It's about embracing this amazing journey of witnessing life's magic. And one thing that just makes me so sad is to realize that there are people who will live their entire lives and they won't learn to heal themselves. They won't learn to manifest. They'll stay with that base programming for the rest of their entire lives because they either don't know about this information, they aren't willing to try to heal themselves, they're deflecting to heal themselves, or maybe they just don't even understand it because it's too witchy, it's too evil, and they have all of these conflicting beliefs that say that this part of themselves is wrong. And so they will only be subjected to what was already, I guess, inherited within them. And sometimes I feel like that makes me so sad to sit there and really see that there are some people who will never manifest. There's some people who will never heal. Maybe they'll heal in a next few generations. Maybe they'll heal in another reincarnated life, but they'll never heal. And I think that part of me keeps going. That part of me shows up every day. That part of me says, I don't care who's listening, but someone needs to hear this. And there's a part of me that keeps going because I know that this stuff works, because the internal environment is so much more powerful than using external change. External change is just rooting into the past. We're just literally playing with the past. And the more we're just playing with the past, we keep recycling the past and conditioning ourselves with the past and reinforcing the past. And we keep reinforcing the past evidence and reinforcing the past story and the past programming and the validation in our identity that says, I'm giving pain a purpose. And this is why I need to give pain a purpose. And that element of, it's almost like a segregation of who we are begins to take place. And instead, we must learn that we always hold the power to co-create in the now. We always hold that power within us to heal ourselves. Our body is telling us all the time how to heal ourselves. Our intuition is always guiding us through our magnetism, how to heal ourselves, how to empower ourselves, how to manifest. And it's this point of awareness that we must embrace. We must embrace that we are so much more than one single idea, one string of beliefs, one string of habits, one string of behaviors, one string of emotional triggers. And we're so much more than that because you are the universe. You are literally the universe expressing itself. And so when I started to really question my reality, it became a catalyst to wanting to help others. And I started helping others on Tumblr as a Q&A blog, and I would just help people for free. And what I began to notice through this experience is I began to open up my mind to so much more information because I was working with other people and other people's minds. And one of the strongest things I love to really emphasize is our ability to see others' perspectives, our ability to have an open mind and be open to new perspectives of seeing the world is how we actually help ourselves heal and change ourselves. Because it's in that perspective shift. I always love that there's this quote by Napoleon Hill. Oh gosh, I'm going to butcher it. But it's about the power of the mastermind. It's actually in the book Think and Grow Rich. If you ever read that chapter, it's incredible. It's the power of the mastermind. And he says something along the lines of, when we have the ability to learn from others' perspectives, we start to train ourselves to think from others' minds, and we start to learn different perspectives of the world because we're using the mastermind effect. We're using the mastermind effect of seeing different perspectives of the world and using that perspective of the world to shift and change ourselves. And so when we learn from other people who may be already where we are or where we want to be, and then we learn from people who are where we desire to be, we start to take on these new beliefs, new perspectives, and new awareness of who we are. We start to create different awareness. And ultimately, because of that, we start to open up our minds to different ways of seeing the world. And so we start to see that instead of just staying in that one idea, that one perception, that one way of seeing, a spiritual awakening and just opening ourselves up to more mindset, more clarity, it ultimately it guides us to completely crack open our perceptions of the world. And it's in that perception of changing yourself, you can start to see that by opening up to new perspectives, that is actually how you create real transformation, because you've dropped out of that limited thinking mind and you stepped more into the limitless mind of infinite possibilities and probabilities, which is created from the unified field of consciousness. So this concept of we're only seeing one way of doing things is the limited mind, the ego, the part of ourselves that is fixed in the old ways, that is stuck in the old programming. And when we start to heal, when we start to manifest, when we start to empower ourselves, when we start to emotionally heal, we're accessing different levels of perception that weren't consciously available to us before. I always found that so beautiful to recognize, is to see that when you're in a limited perception, you're just stuck in an illusion. But there's still other perceptions going on. There's still different frequencies and different emotions and different ways of seeing the world. And there's still different paradigms going on behind the scenes because you're just stuck in that one idea, that one perception. And one thing that really taught me a lot in the early days of spiritual awakening was to start creating that empathetic connection where I was feeling really kind of like, wow, so many more people are experiencing this too. Like, wow, this is so much bigger than just me freaking out about having out-of-body experiences and having weird visions and seeing numerology and 222 everywhere. And instead I started to see that, wow, there are other people going through the same thing that I'm struggling with. And I started to really make that huge connection of this is so much bigger than me. This is so much bigger than my ego, my fears, my freakouts, my anxiety. And I started to really peel back to the layers of moving away from, I don't know what the heck is going on with me. I don't understand this. I am so confused. I have no clarity. I'm just twirling around and trying to figure out what's going on with me. And instead, I started to build this empathetic connection. And I feel that's what really started the Tumblr blog blooming into what it is. And it was this moment of, wow, this is massive. There are tons of people who are going through the same thing that I am in result of spiritual awakening, in result of emotionally healing themselves, in result of energetically stepping into understanding themselves, into knowing what is energy work, into trying to figure out what is going on with their energy body. And I began to have so many moments of, yes, I saw energy for the first time. Yes, I saw this happen for the first time. And instead, I started to build this empathetic connection with realizing that this was so much bigger and more magical and substantial. And I started to see that the awakening, the collective consciousness, like this veil of oneness, was all about us rising up together And it's that connection piece, that rising up together vibe that really kept me going in times where I did feel lost and confused and frustrated and upset and not sure how to navigate the ascension symptoms and not sure how to navigate myself or understand myself. And I think it's beautiful to recognize that, because if you ever felt that way, like, we have to remember you are not alone on this journey. There are so many others like you out there in the world who are experiencing exactly the same thing as you. And not only do you have that power within you, you have intuitive capabilities, amazing gifts, transformative work that is just burning to come outside of you, because you have a purpose. You have a purpose. And the more that you see that and see that as a light worker, a shadow worker, or whatever, we as empaths, as that bridging that connection, we have the ability to not just change ourselves, but give a ripple to everyone that we come in contact with. And I think sometimes when we're tripping up on the stupid shit, we have to come back to that and remember that it's not just about service or support. It's about that empathetic connection within us that is causing a ripple effect out into the world around us through who we interact with, who we are spending our time with. This empathetic connection is always occurring. And to get back on track to my point, it's about realizing that that connection is ultimately how you can start to heal yourself. And so over the years, I really began to understand that I can't shut up about this work. And growing up, I was a very shy kid. I was a very shy person, and I always let my mother talk for me, and she always made decisions for me. And so really stepping up into my voice, into my power, this was requiring some deep, deep healing work. Mother wound work, really getting clear on my programming, really getting clear on my beliefs, really getting clear on really just everything about who I am had to have an upgrade and a shift, because in order to really voice my truth, I had to step out of that perception of the shy girl and that identity shift of being the shy girl growing up. And I think this is interesting to me, because when we think about identity as a whole, we often can feel that we're really fixed in our identity. Like, it feels like we're stuck in this set way of who we are. But the reality is we're not. And we have to see that actually how we define ourselves, such as, being the shy girl or the outspoken person who never shuts up or something. And we can always shift and change who we are, because what we have to see is technically I was just inherited as the shy girl. That was my base programming of who I was. It felt that it was more normal to be timid, shy, and let others speak for me versus speak for myself, decide for myself, have my own voice, feel emotionally empowered to communicate and express my needs versus not. And this became a huge catalyst for me to heal my throat chakra. And this became a huge element in actually establishing the core foundation of my business. Is I started to heal my throat chakra. And what I began to really see from this is that was a persona I was creating. And it's almost like you have to see your identity, your personas, they are kind of like clothes that you put on. And the reality is you can always take that outfit off and put another outfit on. But instead, we don't see it that way. It's like we see it as if we're wearing the same outfit like for 20 days in a row or an entire year, and that we think we can't do anything differently. But the reality is what I began to see is even though I felt that particular way, I began to heal myself and heal my self-expression the more that I stepped up and shared my truth with spiritual awakening. And I really began to notice these drastic shifts in how I was showing up. My consistency, who I was as a person started to change. My sense of values, my sense of standards, my sense of boundaries. All of these things started to shift the more I shift my actual identity. And to get back to really what I was saying here is when we have these identity shifts, they are changing our perspective and the makeup of the body. And how this connects to spiritual awakening is truly everything, because you can start to see that healing is created in those perspective shifts. And that's literally what I began to notice. And so over the years, I started to understand that these are actually patterns that are looping in our nervous system, and we can learn how to sever them and change them. And so a lot of my work has covered this core foundational concept of how we can emotionally learn to empower ourselves from the inside out by understanding the energetic patterns that are looping in our nervous system that are creating that personal identity that is literally keeping you in a state of sabotage, separation, limited thinking, suffering, not fully healing. Anything that's keeping you in that space where you feel stuck or lost or stagnant, or you just have like emotional overload, or maybe you have like psychic overload where you're just bombarded by information and you have that overactive empathy. All of that can be shifted and changed. And so the more I stepped into the awakened state as a brand, as a company, as a business, and I started to move everything off of Tumblr and onto a real website, which you see today as theawakenedstate.net, I started to change the stories I was saying and telling the more I shifted my identity of who I was. And it became this conversation of seeing that spiritual awakening is so much more than just a new age concept that we like twirl around in our minds and chant in new age circles. It's a moment of really understanding yourself, really diving into the layers of who you authentically are. Like, I think about this all the time, like who would we be if we weren't always afraid? Who would we be if we weren't stuck in our suffering, in our stories? Who would we be if we weren't so fixated on our pain? Who would we be beyond our base programming? Like, I think about that all the time. Like, we all have a purpose inside of ourselves. We all have our authentic self. But there's a part of us that suppresses that. There's a part of us that locks that away inside of ourselves, that keeps it stuck, that keeps it stagnant, that we don't allow ourselves to go there. And because of that, that's why we feel so misaligned in our lives. We feel awful. We feel drained. We feel upset. We feel heavy. We have illness. We freak out. And it's, yes, this is part of the human experience, but who are we when we're fully tapped in to our soul alignment? What does that look like? What does it look like to truly own your purpose? What does it look like to truly ignite your passions in your life and know that you can go after your dreams? Most people don't even think about these things. Most people just go about their way and like say, oh, well, that's good enough. And that's it. And I think about that so often because I don't think I could live my life without dreaming, without being in that space of always trying to better my life, to be in this place where I know that I'm co-creating my life. and to know that there are people out there in the world who don't think this way, who feel that that's just it, that think that there's no purpose, that there's no like true gifts inside of them, that just makes me so sad, because I think about like people who just are like wasting away their lives and they're not doing what they're passionate about. They're not doing their creative genius. Everyone has a creative genius inside of them, but they're either accessing that part of themselves on a daily basis or they're not. And I think when we go into a place of spiritual awakening, we have to ask ourselves these deeper questions, because what's the fucking point otherwise? You know, we have to go into that place in our mind where, am I truly connecting to my soul's desires of my heart? Or am I just settling again and again and again while my soul basically screams at me that I'm in misalignment with who I truly am? Because that's the real reason that spiritual awakening comes online, is your soul's waking up. Your soul's having like a reemergence. And it's saying it's time to ignite with your authentic self, with your higher self, with your highest truth inside of you, that you hold the power to co-create, that you hold the power to co-create your life. And it's time to emotionally heal. It's time to completely get off of this fence that you've made. And instead, it's time to wake up to really who you truly are, your authentic self. Like, I remember there's this moment where I went to an art show with my love. He's an artist, and we always are scouting out art markets to just make sure we're getting his art out there. And I remember this one place where we went. It was in Illinois, and I think it was Ottawa. It was like a really like town in the middle of nowhere. And it was this town full of artists, and they would come out and they would all showcase their art. And I remember meeting this really old guy, and he was just so proud. He was just like, I pulled this stuff out of my garage today, and I felt so good being able to share it and show it in the art fair. And, you know, he wasn't like getting paid for it. He wasn't, you know, he's not probably in top galleries in the world, but he just felt so proud to share his art. And I don't know why, but that was just so inspiring to me, because I saw like in that moment, like a spark. Like he was owning his passions. He was doing what creatively felt good to him. He was being self-expressed. And I want you to think about that. How many of us are being fully self-expressed? How many of us are really being self-expressed? Like, I say this to myself all the time. Do I want to spend the next 20 years of my life and then go back and say, well, gee, that was fun scrolling Facebook and going on a couple of vacations? Or do I really want to stop and be like, I am making sure every single day counts, that I'm sharing who I am, that I'm embodying my highest self, that I'm stepping into my core truth of who I am, that I'm making sure I'm expressed in what I do, and I listen to my body, and I listen to my intuition, and I make sure that I make time for what I enjoy. I always make time for what matters to me and what truly matters to me. And making sure that every single day that I have that daily joy, that I have that point of awareness where I know I'm showing up and I can go to bed at night feeling content, feeling inspired and empowered, and with that zest for life. And I think about how many people out there don't feel that way. And when we go into this place in our minds of spiritual awakening, we have to see that this is a deeper conversation. This really is a deeper conversation of owning your authentic self, owning who you are. So as I told you the story of when I was the shy girl, and then as I started to embrace this brand and this business, I started to move more into sharing my truth in that element of self-expression. And you can like look at my older videos and see the transformation. Like, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, but I kept going and I kept going and I kept going. And the more you keep going, you are building and compounding your identity of who you are. And while I'm talking about like my spiritual business here, you can apply that to any area of your life. And I want you to feel empowered, inspired, hopeful for change. I want you to feel that you hold the power to change your life, because you do. You hold the power to go after your goals. You hold the power to be motivated and inspired, and to stop living from that state of fear or fight or flight, and to recognize that your intuition truly holds the power to carry you forward. That is one of my strongest values at the Awakened State, is to empower you to remember who you are beyond the base programming that you've been fed. And to really look at this from a lens of knowing that when you empower yourself, you naturally have more love to give, more fulfillment to give. You cannot do that when you don't feel fulfilled. You cannot do that when you feel like you're stuck in fear. You can't do that when you're in lack. You can't do that because you're not dropped in. You're not dropped into your soul. You're not dropped into who you actually are. You're walking around with the base programming that was inherited to you, and you're not even tapped into your authentic self anymore. Like, when we look at it that way, imagine a world where we are tapped into our authentic truth. We're living out our purpose. We're going after our dreams. We're empowering ourselves and teaching others to do the same by who we interact with, by the ripple effect of who we are. And because of that, we're allowing our self-expression to be heard by the world. And maybe that self-expression is the part that changes the world. Maybe that self-expression is the catalyst. You know, this is going to sound really weird, but when you think about ascension and awakening, all of these things are just about your higher self. All of these things are just about you coming back home to who you are. So maybe the more that we come back home to who we are and we be the fullest expression of ourselves, maybe that aspect is the awakening. Maybe that aspect of ourselves is the real ascension. Because we're ascending now. It's not some galactic day in the distant future where aliens are going to save us and Jesus is coming. It's not about that. Instead, it's this coming home to who you are and stepping into your authentic self. So the more I started to really understand this, the more I began to realize that these energetic patterns are something that is so important to understanding who we are. Because if we can understand our identity, then we can learn to change our identity. And it's not like we're changing our identity to be like some fake persona of ourselves. It's like we're changing our identity to be more and more and more and more of who we actually are. And when we get that, I mean, really, 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 really get that, we start to live or more authentic, aligned life. And so when I say alignment, what I'm talking about is your authenticity, your self-expression, who you are beyond all the junk, all the noise you've been fed. There's a person inside of you who is always there, who knows the answer, who knows the solution, who knows exactly what to do and what to say. And you have to be willing to access that part of yourself. You have to be willing to silence the noise to hear yourself again. Because in hearing yourself again, the path reveals itself. The path reveals itself. And that place where you can stop feeling so lost, so confused, so conflicted, so upset or suffering or any of that. And instead, you can go into that place inside of you any moment at any time, and you can say, but my soul already knows. My intuition is guiding me. I trust my magnetism is guiding me. Because the moment you get that, you realize that you can operate from your authentic self, and you don't have to operate from the limited programming anymore. You can choose to essentially opt out of that because it's just a part of you. It's just your past. But you don't have to operate from the past. You don't have to live from the past, and you don't have to keep sustaining the story of the past. And instead, you can choose to rise into your authentic self more and more and more and more and more and more. And that's what it really means to be your higher self. It's not some mystical, magical person as a guru who's stupid, like enlightened and like all of these things in nirvana and completely disconnected from reality and in some intergalactic dimension. None of that. It is your authentic self. Higher self is you. Higher self is your authentic self. And so the more that I began to really understand energy, get away from just like, this is the ascension symptoms, I'm going to suffer from the ascension symptoms the rest of my life, I got over all of that. And I started to realize that I could heal my overactive empathy. I started to realize that I didn't have to just stay in this state of overwhelm and procrastinating and really just exhausting my nervous system and completely living in my higher chakras, in my head, overwhelmed, confused, and kind of in this space of psychic overwhelm, and which I like to call is spiritual burnout. And instead of living from that place of spiritual burnout, I really began to understand that I had the power to shift energy. I had the power to alchemize energy. I had the power to change patterns in my nervous system. I had the power to understand the solutions for the problems I was having. And because of understanding energy, understanding how to manage my energy, understanding the energy systems I created, understanding how it all worked, I suddenly no longer was afraid of my power. I was no longer afraid of my spiritual power. And I think that's what's happening to a lot of people on the spiritual awakening path. I think we're just essentially afraid of who we are. We're afraid of our power. We're afraid of our light. We're just afraid of the unknown. We're afraid of that part of ourselves that has limitless potential. We're afraid of truly stepping into owning our gifts. We're afraid of really amping up our intuition and realizing it's not hocus pocus or something weird. It's a part of you. It's a natural part of you. It's as real to you as using your arms and legs. And I think we dismiss that due to conditioning, due to society, due to all this external noise we've been fed, that we forget the simplicity and the nature of who we are at our core is intuitive, and we're naturally, when we could say it's divine feminine, but I don't like to confuse people with divine feminine and divine masculine, and instead just root into the fact that you are naturally supernatural, because there's an intuitive part of you that always has the answer because it's connected to quantum intelligence. Where do you think channeling comes from? Channeling comes from the quantum of collective consciousness. Where do you think intuition comes from? Quantum intelligence. Where do you think all of these concepts come from? It comes from the unified field of consciousness that we're always connected to, but we don't feel we're connected to it. And so the hugest journey is to come back to reconnection to your soul. And so the reconnection to your soul is really that. When we really think about it, when I felt really disconnected from who I was in the beginning steps of spiritual awakening. One of the strongest elements of how I reclaimed my spiritual power, one of the strongest ways that I began to step away from being afraid of myself and afraid of my potential and afraid of my power, is I started to really get clear on reconnecting to myself, reconnecting to who I am, reconnecting to my spiritual truth, reconnecting to limitless possibilities, quantum intelligence. And I started to get really clear on reconnecting back to who is the authentic me. It's like we keep looking for the answer outside of ourselves, but we forget the strongest answer is inside of ourselves. That's where the answers really are. And it's funny because I feel like, I could really relate to this because I remember when I first started manifesting, I was really afraid to manifest. I remember being afraid that I could manifest bad things happening, or I could manifest that I could manifest a car crash or something. And that was because one of my beliefs I had when I was little was we received a bunch of money because we got into a car accident when we were trying to go to Florida. And that belief stood with me. So when I went to try to do something and manifest money successfully, I could never do it because I was holding a belief that said, if I manifest, bad things could happen. And do you see how that can translate into I'm afraid to manifest? I'm afraid to really let go. I'm afraid to really allow. I'm afraid to feel safe receiving. So it's beliefs like that are holding you hostage in your mind from actually receiving in the life, the alignment, the flow, the magnetism, the power within you. And so what I began to see really early on is I could learn to heal that and clean that up. And I don't believe that anymore at all. I believe that all of my manifestations are for highest good. I believe I always am manifesting positive experiences in the energy of love and above energy because I created that. Do you see the difference? So there are beliefs in our nervous system that do not serve us. There are habits in our nervous system that are sabotaging us. There are behaviors in our nervous system that are fueling those habits and causing the self-sabotage that is instigating that pattern from the energy that is looping in your nervous system and causing you to suppress your natural power to co-create and heal yourself. So when we think about these concepts as a whole, it is always about reconnecting to soul, reconnecting to our higher truth, and most importantly, going beyond the conditioning that we have created. And so this is one of the strongest elements that is a core foundation of the awakened state. Is I teach many people how to understand those energy patterns and how you can learn to shift and change the identity. And this is all about that authentic self and really going back to who you truly are. And as I like to say in the Soul Nourishment Bootcamp, it's about tapping into your soul blueprint. The part of you that already knows, the part of you that has amazing desires, amazing soul longings, soul needs that need met. The part of you that has that intuitive magic inside of you. And that's the part where you begin to see that you naturally are magnetic, but your magnetism is working against you. You naturally are intuitive, but you might be suppressing it. You naturally are co-creating your life, but you might be doing it unconsciously. And so one of the core missions at the awakened state is for you to get radically clear, radically aware, and learn how to drastically shift your perspective. So The awakened state as a whole is truly about learning to step into your authentic self. Who are you beyond everything, everyone that told you who to be? I want you to answer that question, journal on that question, ponder on that question, and allow this message to really soak in. And let me know, what do you feel when you go into the space in your mind where you are connected to your soul truth? What is the difference between being connected versus being disconnected? Okay, love you guys. And before you go, I wouldn't mind if you left a review on the iTunes, the Awakened State podcast, so that we can get more eyes and ears on this beautiful, amazing podcast experience. Expect more and more and more to come. See ya. Hey guys, Ashley here. Thank you for joining me in another episode of the Awaken and Manifest Your Best Life podcast. This is going to be the space for manifesting tips, energy tips, spiritual awakening advice, and all things receiving that kick your ass soul injection back to your personal alignment. I do have a free gift for you if you're ready to be a VIP and receive exclusive access to our Awakened library, packed full of guidebooks, audios, meditations, workbooks, quizzes, and tons of goodies for yours truly. You can get that all at library.theawakenedstate.net. Head to library.theawakenedstate.net. So enjoy that, and remember, you always are more than enough, because the universe is inside of you and you hold the power to design your life.